Hello, welcome to another episode of Mega Manga Monday. I am Jason Hahn, and today we are talking about One Piece, chapter 1053. Oh my god, so much happened in this chapter. It's just everything's coming together, and as I said, I'm Jason Hahn. I'm a writer for ScreenRant.com. I happen to write a lot of video game news, and I'm also a huge manga fan. So I decided to start Mega Manga Mondays, and I've got a couple other buddies with me here to talk about the newest chapter of One Piece. Well, actually, today's a special episode. I just got one good buddy with me, and we've got a lot of One Piece to talk about. How are you today, Ben?
Yeah, I'm doing great, especially after reading this chapter because, whoo boy, lot of ground to cover, and I'm very excited to do it. But I'm Ben. I also write a Screen Rant for the comics section, mainly about manga and DC and Marvel comics. And One Piece is my favorite manga of all time. So this chapter was just a pleasure to read, and I let's just dive into it. I just want to open with I can't believe he made it. I'm so happy that he's finally made it. That he's finally a Yonko.
Oh, okay.
And of
Yeah,
course by
there was so many he's that made it in this chapter. I
yeah, no,
wasn't
of
sure.
course by he I mean Buggy D Clown. The
Is he a
the one
D?
day not technically I don't think, but he's a D in our hearts.
It's true.
Buggy D Clown. And he's one day gonna be king of the pirates. This chapter just proves it, in my opinion. Uh and I support that all the way.
I could see it happening because he's never wanted to do that. Buggy has always just failed upwards. And, oh boy. So, I mean, I actually have a whole bunch of notes for that because I read a lot of great. One of my favorite things to do after a new chapter comes out is to go into the Reddit and see what people are saying. And sometimes people pick up things that I missed and they bring up other things too. But yeah, but Buggy the freaking Clown is a new Emperor of the Sea, as well as Blackbeard and
Well,
Luffy
Blackbeard was
and
already
oh, true, and Luffy and the classic red hair Shanks. So
yeah.
I
So
mean, Luffy has officially made it to. I don't know. He kind of previously made it as the unofficial fifth emperor, but I feel like this is a little bit more substantial now because even then that was kind of like, oh, we don't have five emperors, but we have another one who's kind of there. But now it's like officially established, like the new four emperors. Like this just
yeah,
feels a little bit more
and
official than the whole Cake Island announcement.
and that shot too of the emperors is just so good. Like them using Joy Boy Luffy for
Hmm.
the emperor picture. It's just it's so good.
Well, it's just the
Uh,
smile is the thing
yeah.
that I think that the chapter starts off again with the world government 5 stars or world stars. I forget their official title now, but
I think you mean the five old men, like
yeah,
the Gorosei?
the elders, the Gorosei, yes. Um, they're just saying like the world cannot be permitted to see this, and I'm wondering if it's they don't want the Joy Boy smile to start infecting people essentially.
I could see that. Yeah. And also they don't want the D to appear, which is very important.
Yeah, I mean whenever a D appears, that changes everything.
Yeah. And note that there's the theory that's gone around for a while that the D is basically just a smile, right?
Oh boy.
And Luffy's smile is just exemplifying that, right? It looks like a giant D. And so maybe part of the reason they're so upset is because not just the letter D appearing, but also that they used that picture of him smiling so wide.
Hmm. Well, yeah, because it's infectious, and I almost wonder back when Luffy was first using his powers against Kaido and stuff, it kind of we were kind of given the hint that it's almost like Luffy feeds off of almost the positivity of others that support
Mm.
him. So this picture getting spread around is going to give Luffy some fans. So I'm almost wondering if that's going to somehow lead into, a power buff when he needs it or something. Because
Yeah, I could.
it's almost like a Goku asking for a spirit bomb kind of thing. People all around the world are able to give him energy, positive energy. And I'm kind of wondering
Yeah,
if Oda's going to do something similar with Luffy somewhere down the line.
I could definitely see that. Like, we still don't really know about the Will of D, and we don't know why the government wants to suppress it or why it's such a threat to the government. And it would make perfect sense if the reason why the government's suppressing all the information about the Void Century isn't just because it makes them look bad, but because it actually empowers their enemies.
Well, I mean, you could argue that even if that doesn't end up being true, that Luffy gets a power boost from people giving him energy, it still gives the enemies power, just with morale and that
Yeah.
information. And it's, again, another reason I think Big News Morgan is one of the MVPs of the entire series.
Oh yeah, and he's proving that here. He's like, I don't care what the government says. You know, I'm not printing propaganda. I'm printing what's happening, and people need to know what's happening. And it's just so good. It's crazy to think that Big News Morgan only was introduced in Whole Cake.
Yeah.
Uh, like he's still a relatively new character, and just he feels so important and vital, and like he could have been a character this whole time.
Yeah, I think he's a brilliant addition to the cast because the especially the fan base loves to focus on the bounty numbers so much.
Mm.
So I love that we've finally okay, well, who controls the bounty numbers and who gets the information out? So it was really an important character that I feel, especially in our modern day and age in real life, with the spread of misinformation and how easy that is to
Mm.
get around. The character of Big News Morgan is absolutely pivotal for the world of One Piece, and I wish that we had a. We might have several people like Big News Morgan in the real world, but the world government just needs to launch their own disinformation campaign and get everyone to start doubting everything that the news says, and
Mm.
those sorts of tactics that we're familiar with in the real world.
Yeah, and
But
well, I do want to say that on the topic of bounties, it is interesting because the bounties aren't actually controlled by Big News Morgan, but I do think that the Yonko determinations are. Uh, I can imagine that being the case because unlike the Shichibukai, which were like government positions, right? Like the government was like, okay, these are seven pirates that we're gonna pay basically just to be on our side.
oh, the warlords.
The Yeah, the warlords. Like the Yonko are sort of their own thing, separate from the government. Like the government basically treats them as their own nations,
Hmm.
but I think the fact that the government set all the bounties for Luffy, Kid, and Law at 3 billion berries.
Which I
And I
thought
think
was
the fact
odd.
Yeah, it's odd. Like for one, that's less than Kaido and Big Mom's bounties were,
Hmm.
and they just defeated Kaido and Big Mom. So you'd think maybe their bounties would be higher. Although I guess the combined total of them is 9 billion, and the combined total of Big Mom and Kaido's bounties are 8 billion. So I
Oh,
guess it
okay.
makes sense in that respect.
See,
But
I think you're absolutely right, and it was one theory that I read that I completely agree with. Also, that um, that the bounties were possibly set to be even, so then it would make Luffy seem less important than he really is. Because
mm,
I almost feel like the world government doesn't want people to really understand Luffy's Joy Boy and all that stuff. So the best way that they could do that is to make him seem like he's just like the other pirates that have done that. And then Big News Morgan is just like, okay, that's cool. Well, I'm gonna make Luffy an emperor.
yeah,
So I think that perfectly explains why the emperor. I think Morgan is in charge of kind of giving the titles of emperor and stuff like that, while the world government is in charge of bounty numbers. I think that makes absolute sense. But yeah, the world government, especially because they know Luffy has awakened as Joy Boy, they want to do their best to underplay him and not give him the power that they fear.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And that's, that just goes back to the initial moment where they're like, reprint the bounties. We can't have people knowing that Luffy is so powerful that he's a D. That he carries that will of D.
Which I honestly thought that the D was in his previous wanted posters. Am I wrong?
Oh, I don't actually know. Let me check real quick because I feel like you might be right.
Because that doesn't feel like a new revel. Of course, that's not a new revelation for fans, but I mean, ever since I've been rewatching One Piece
Yeah, no,
with my son, and we just got off of Chopper's Island, and even then, Kurenai is just like, "Oh, a D, huh? I'm glad to see the Will of D is still around." Like, that's
yeah,
that's something that's been
the
around.
D is in the old wanted posters.
Weird.
And going back to the old wanted posters, I just realized, they might play a bit fast and loose because you have Usopp listed as God Usopp on his wanted poster. So, which is justifiable because it's Usopp, it's God Usopp. But
Yeah, that almost makes me even more excited to get the rest of our crew bounty posters, because I feel like that's inevitable. We got to see what Zoro's new bounty is. We got to see what Sanji is, and of
yeah,
course, I'm just refreshing everything that went on in the raid, and there was even at one point where the enemies thought that Usopp had Conqueror's Haki. So I could see Usopp, God Usopp's bounty going up even more with that news.
yeah, I'm just excited for the final Yonko of the series to be just like Luffy, Buggy, God Usopp, and whatever that guy who like follows around, like Cavendish, I think.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, that will be the final for Yonko.
the one that's
Calling it now.
beautiful.
Oh no, wait, not Cavendish. No, the really annoying guy that follows them around, whose name I refuse to remember because I don't like the character.
Oh
But who's
boy.
there like every big moment, right?
You got to be way more specific with annoying characters.
He's like basically it's funny because he's a Straw Hat fanboy.
Oh,
So
Bartolomeo.
yeah, Bartholomew or whatever his name
We'll
is.
call him Bart.
Like yeah, I that's gonna be the fourth Yonko right there.
Oh boy, I
Uh,
hope so because It sounds like we disagree. I am a big Bart fan.
oh no,
I
I hate him.
I think Oda like took all the most passionate fans that he's ever encountered and then put them into the series as Bart.
That's why I hate him. I don't like having a mirror shined in my face and being like, "This is you," and I'm like, "No, that isn't me."
Ben, don't be ashamed. You're beautiful.
No.
It's
I see. I want to be a Cavendish instead of a Bartholomew. Uh,
yeah.
actually, I don't. Cavendish has his own problems.
Yeah.
Uh,
I'd rather be Bart than split personality Cavendish.
yeah.
But speaking of kind of going back to the world reacting to this news, did you spot the Sabo cameo we got?
I did. Yes. I'm not sure quite what that means though,
Oh
because
well, that's the thing
like,
about Oda's brilliance. Like he put him in there, but there it literally gives us no information
yeah,
on.
I almost feel like it was just put there to be like, this is the revolutionary camp, and this is how they're reacting to that. Um, which yeah, I could see them maybe having a picture of Sabo up because Sabo has been captured. I've seen theories that say like, oh, this means Sabo is dead, and I disagree with those. I think that would be like it would just it wouldn't fit what Oda's building up to because like the the post time skip stuff has been sort of like a rerun of what happened pre time skip, where like you know you basically have the strides hitting a lot of the same notes that they've already hit, and one note that we haven't hit yet is Marineford,
Mm-hmm.
and so like Sabo can fill the ace role for Marineford here, and I think that's what Oda is trying to do, and maybe just to have like a thing where like Luffy's now powerful enough to rescue Sabo where he failed Ace. And I could definitely see that happening in like the next arc potentially.
Uh,
But
yeah.
it,
Previous to. Oh, go on. Finish that.
yeah, no, I was just gonna say it wouldn't make sense if Sabo's dead.
Right.
Like that would just throw away a lot of what Oda was building up to.
I agree. I almost think it's something, and it's something that I've been anxious to talk to you about since we have had scheduling issues for the last couple discussions, so we haven't been able to have a normal discussion. But last couple chapters, we had more death in One Piece than we've ever had,
Yeah,
which
like two of
is,
the scabbards.
yeah, two of the scabbards, Hawkins, and I think it's safe to say Big Mom and Kaido
I
until
don't think it's
otherwise.
safe to say. I honestly
Yeah.
don't think it's safe to say because,
I think they're as dead
sure.
as Sabo
No, I disagree with that too. Like, I
because
feel like,
I don't think Sabo's actually dead. I think that the world government put that news out there to make them feel to seem even better. But I was kind of getting to the point that I feel like Oda wants us to feel like Sabo is dead, especially after these last couple chapters of. It's almost like him saying, like, I'm not afraid to kill off characters. People die in One Piece. See, and I'm almost thinking that we're going to be getting like some false information to think that Sabo is dead, and then possibly that will. We've had previous discussions on where Luffy could go from here with the news that Sabo has been captured or he's dead. I think Luffy's going to be given the choice to either go to the next step towards the One Piece or to go towards Mariwa. Uh,
see, I agree with that part of it, but I don't think that Oda put the Sabo picture there to be like, well, Sabo could be dead. You never know. I think he just like, who knows what Oda's doing? Maybe he's doing it to like big brain outsmart his fans, but I feel like it's just I feel like fans are sort of reading into that too much. Like, it could just be to remind us like Sabo's a thing, and there are people in a faction that care about him deeply, or like the revolutionaries now know that Luffy has a huge bounty or is a Yonko. Um, but like I'm not willing to read into it enough to be like, oh yeah, like Oda's trying to make us think this and this about Sabo,
mhm.
because I think Oda is like, not that he doesn't care about his fans, but he's more like he's just crafting this story like, and he knows the fans will pick up on only a lot of details, but I don't think he's trying to like trick the fans or subvert expectations or things.
Uh,
Um,
Please don't use the term subvert expectations.
I will say of any series, I do think that One Piece subverts expectations quite well in many points.
Yeah,
It,
I feel like the Game of Thrones writers have ruined those two words being put together for for nerds.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
but
that's
yes,
fair.
I agree. One Oda is actually does it very well. Because there's several things that we anticipate that he does do just because it's good storytelling, and then there's other things that he subverts expectations to do something even cooler that we didn't
Yeah.
anticipate, which is not something the Game of Thrones guys, but that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, I feel like it's a difference between subverting expectations to like make your story better and reward your fans, and
Yes.
subverting expectations to be like, oh, you liked this character, eh? Well, now they're dead. Isn't that so realistic? As opposed to like, this is what the story needs.
Yeah.
And I will say, having read the books for A Song of Ice and Fire, I think that the books do it a fair bit better than the show does. Especially with certain I was about to go into like certain details, but I realized that some people might not want spoilers, so I will refrain from doing that. But
Yeah, I think
uh,
we both have a lot to say about Game of Thrones. I we'll I'll you know what? I'll just stop the conversation right now because it will be very easy for us to go into a
maybe
15
that will
20
be
minute.
a very special episode of Mega Manga Mondays where we just dive into Game of Thrones or Song of Ice and Fire and rant about it.
Oh,
Uh,
I'm sure. You know what? I'd be surprised if there's not like a comic rendition or a manga version of that. We might have to do that.
There is a graphic novel version of at least like the first book,
Oh, it's so cool.
but honestly, it's not worth it. Like it's just a retelling of the book itself. So,
Okay.
um,
One
it
Piece.
well, yeah, it's like I don't think the graphic novel's worth reading and then discussing. I feel like we could just discuss the show and or the books. Um,
Well,
I've only read the novels, but
right. Let us know in the comments if you guys would like to hear a whole episode of us talking about Game of Thrones. It might have to be another thing other than Mega Manga Mondays, but we'll see
yeah.
where the future see what the future brings. But yeah, I've got a whole bunch of
Fabulous
notes.
Fantasy Fridays. That's what it will be.
Ooh,
Uh,
that sounds nice. It well. I've got a whole list of things that I wanted to talk about in this One Piece chapter. So I love the idea that when Shanks went to go talk to the Gorsey, he warned them about Buggy.
that would be great. I would love that. That would be so funny.
See, there's
Oh,
so many great theories on how Buggy failed up to this position. That's one of my favorites. Another one that I thought of, which doesn't make sense now with this last theory that we've come up with, that Morgans is in charge of emperors and world government is in charge of bounties. If but let's throw that theory to the side for now, even though I do like that one. But another theory I liked about the Buggy thing was that the world government made Buggy an emperor because the new shift in power dynamics and all that, like it's going to be incredibly difficult to topple what Luffy's accomplished, what Blackbeard's accomplished, whatever Shanks does. However, I almost feel like the government put Buggy in an emperor position because they've either already taken him down or captured him, or they feel like they can easily do that. Again, to control morale and information, it would definitely make the emperors seem less intimidating if they announced the new four emperors and then shortly were able to dispatch one of the emperors. So
yeah,
I almost feel
I
like
could
it's
see
a
that.
information tactic of why Buggy is an emperor. I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah, I
I
mean, I feel like all signs point to that theory being incorrect because it would actually wait, let me remember what I actually
You're
said.
gonna say it again.
Uh, yeah, I know. I feel like it would actually go against Buggy's role in the narrative though, because like, I mean, and that could be sort of like the subverting expectations to like give us something that's better. Because Oda's like, oh well, this was Buggy's role in the narrative up to this point, but now he's being used to sort of give the world government a feather in their cap, which could also be good. But I feel like it's much funnier and much more in line with what's happened so far. If like Buggy actually did ascend to Yonko status just based on like stuff that maybe not he did, but people perceived that he did. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, because
Yeah,
Buggy's just such a success story, such an inspiration to us all. You know.
yeah. Um, it was actually as soon as I saw One Piece Stampede in the theater, and we got a look of like Buggy's new redesign, where he makes himself seem so much bigger with his costume, with his parts that can fly all over the place. And I was just like, oh man, they're making Buggy like look awesome. And
Yeah.
it was one of those things where I was like, the only reason that they'd make him seem this cool and this big is if he had, a bigger place in the story eventually, because he's all about appearances, and that I hope. Well, it doesn't matter if it was Oda's idea, but whoever came up with that character design is brilliant because it just perfectly personifies Buggy. Like, he is this huge, intimidating thing, but actually it's just a bunch of hot air, and he's just he's just holding all of his clothes with his parts and stuff like that. He's not nearly that big. It's just all appearances. It just perfectly exemplifies that character. It's just
Yeah.
brilliant.
And I think that Oda did come up with that because I think well, actually, when did Stampede come out? Because
Stampede, I think, came out about 3-4 years ago, and that's just one of those things where it's so hard to tell because anytime a new movie comes out, they say like, "Oh yeah, from Enchira Oda," and there's like, "Yeah, he helped with this movie," and you're like, "How much did he help?" Because
yeah, like I could see him coming up with that because it does fit in line with what he plans for Buggy or what he's planned for Buggy so far. Like but it could just have been sort of an inspired moment for like the character designer who did it. It's tough to say. Like movies are always collaborative, even when they're sort of set in a world that's so married to like one author's vision. But
well, I would like
it's
to
tough.
think over the years too. I mean, it's probably a lot like I've heard the creation of like Elden Ring and Dark Souls. The team behind that have been working together for so long that they just know how to work together. Like I
Yeah.
like to think that Oda has a good team under him of friends that all just barely need to say any words together. They just click and they know exactly what the other is looking for. So I don't know if it's we'll never know either if that was Oda's design or if one of his editors came up with it and he's just like, oh, that's awesome, we're gonna use that.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like no matter what happens, it's whoever came up with it, it doesn't matter in the end. It just
Right.
comes down to like, you know, how much we enjoy it.
Yeah.
So,
And
and I do like it. The idea that like the One Piece crew is just a family, right? Behind the scenes as well, is just very pleasant to think about.
yeah, another thing that I really before we move on from One Piece Stampede is we pretty much got the attack that took down Kaido in Stampede.
Oh, interesting.
Well, minus the hockey, the charged hockey, but in that movie, pretty much all of the most powerful fighters are tackling the big guy, while Luffy is putting air in his fist, and he ends up doing like the biggest King Kong gun we've ever seen. But the fist was essentially the same design and look and everything of the punch that took Kaido down too. So I'm curious, and
But
I kind of love the idea that I think we discussed in previous podcasts. I think it's super interesting that Oda, uh, I believe you brought it up in an interview or something that Luffy wasn't going to beat Kaido with just a big punch, and that's exactly what he did.
yeah.
I think somebody asked. It might have been you or Francesco who brought that up, but going down the list, we still got a lot more in this chapter to talk about. So we got oh boy, a couple things we could definitely talk about. But let's go ahead and jump into the new admiral, Roy Kuguya.
Ryokugyu? Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce.
I
Yeah,
mean, I read it really fast and I was just like, oh yeah, Rengeku. I can do that.
yeah.
And then I looked back at it and I was like, that's not Rengeku at
A,
all.
a lot of consonants followed immediately by Y's, but yeah, Aramaki is in another way to say it, so that might be a bit easier. But Yeah, I really like him, and I am very curious as to what his fruit actually is, because I think it's related to like plants or flowers,
Hmm.
but he can use it to like suck the life out of people. Like I don't know.
Yeah, it's almost like a world tree kind of fruit. Um, I'm thinking it is some sort of like legendary thing like that, uh, because I know I brought up Elden Ring earlier, but I know there's several stories where, like there's just this giant tree that almost acts as like a parasite, and it's just
Mm.
draining the world and the energy to keep it alive.
I mean, I will say, I do think that's definitely a possibility. I think it would be great if this just turns out to just be like the regular flower fruit, and it just is a testament to Ryokugyu's like either like deviousness or like I don't know that he just managed to like figure out how to use the fruit in such an insidious way.
Hmm.
Um, but I definitely think it is probably a legendary fruit, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Um,
Which one big note I wanted to put down. I mean, they are definitely weakened because they just had the crap kicked out of them, but he just soloed king and queen, and
yeah.
it's kind of disturbing seeing Queen in a skinny old man form because I loved Queen. He was like one of my favorite villains that they've introduced for a long time, um, and they just got stomped like
Oh
literally.
yeah.
So I mean they're doing a great job with building up this admiral. And this chapter really, I don't know if I want to say it fully changed him because we didn't really know anything about him, but so far all the panels and all the information we've gotten on this admiral was he was kind of another like carefree sort of kind of admiral.
Mm.
And I'm glad that he's not. He seems desperate for Akuji's or the fleet admiral's approval, which is
Mm.
something we haven't really gotten in any other admirals so far.
Yeah.
They've just kind of all done their own thing and been carefree. One thing I really enjoyed this discussion, we're going over the fan subs today. The official one hasn't come out yet, but the fan subs like to have some really interesting chapter notes at the end. And they explained that every admiral that we've seen so far is almost a reference to a 1999 movie called Ronin Guy.
Well, they're not necessarily references to like that move. They're more references to like actors
Oh, okay.
who play a certain type of role. So a lot of those actors did appear in that movie, but they're not like all necessarily references to that specific movie. At least I'm
Interesting.
pretty sure. Like that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm
Yeah.
actually I've got it up right now and I'm reading it. And yeah, you're right. It's more of the film also features the actors who are the inspiration for Kizaru and Fujitora.
Mm.
So yeah, I love the idea that Oda is drawing inspiration from like maybe some of his old favorite movies, and
Yeah.
and putting it into this series. It's just like artists taking inspiration from the art they love and to transform to use it into something bigger and beautiful. So I think that
Yeah,
that's
and
incredible.
it just gets into like, I think part of the reason we love One Piece so much is because it's so specific to like Oda's sensibilities, right?
Hmm.
Like he's gotten to the point where he can just make this story the way he wants to do it, and people will just let him do that. So like he's like, yeah, I'll just make these characters look like old actors. And that's just what I'm gonna do, just because I think it's interesting and cool. And he can just do it. And I think that's part of the appeal that like this story just has these very sort of like weird offbeat sort of references and like specific touches that are unique to Oda, and it's what makes it so unique in all of manga, I think. Like I don't think we'll ever have a series quite like One Piece because it's just so specific to Oda. And I don't think that can be said about the other sort of like big three because like for Naruto and Bleach, I feel like a lot of series that have come after them have sort of like copied a lot of aspects about them. But with One Piece, I don't think any series has really done what One Piece has been doing. And that's why One Piece is still going all these years later.
Yeah, I agree. And I almost wonder, like, do you think it'd be even possible to, like, start a series like One Piece today for a mangaka? For a mangaka?
Uh, I think given how Jump is and how like trigger happy they are to cancel things, I think that it probably is it would not happen. I mean, the only way it can happen, in my opinion, is if you start it as like a comedy manga. So like I think the one manga that is most similar to One Piece is actually Gintama. And
Okay.
Gintama, for people who don't know, is just it's mainly a comedy. Like it's mainly just episodic, sort of like comedy things happening with this fun, quirky cast of characters,
Well,
and it's some of the most.
I hold that thought, because I do want to hear you finish it, but uh, to the podcast listeners who might be pushing it a little bit, I mean, I would think most shonens are comedies, but everything I've seen of Gintama is like that is way more like sitcom like comedy
Yeah,
than
it's
most things. Like One Piece
it,
is a comedy with adventure and all that stuff going on, but Gintama seems way more focused on like comedy.
yeah, it's like it's basically if you turned on the TV and like just watched like your standard sitcom. Well, it's definitely not a standard sitcom, but
It's like the
it
Seinfeld of
doesn't.
manga.
Yeah, it doesn't really have too much serialization for a lot of its run, but it does have elements that pop up, like plot elements that do take place over a long period of time, and it does spend a lot of effort building up its world. And it occasionally does have like serious arcs
Hmm.
where things actually do happen, and generally those arcs are like Finn and his crew go somewhere and they meet someone who's in trouble and they help out that person who's in trouble, regardless of like whether the government is acting against them or whatever else you have. Um, and just the way it approaches storytelling, like long term, is very similar to how One Piece approaches storytelling long term, at least to me. Uh, and so I think that series actually comes the closest to doing what One Piece does. But at the same time, it's like very much not plot focused for the majority of its run. And I think that might be sort of like one of the only ways you can sort of have this type of story appear in something like Shonen Jump nowadays because you need time to like build up the story elements. You need time to build up everything. And nowadays time is something that a lot of manga do not have.
Hmm. Yeah, I completely agree. Definitely check out Gintama if
Oh yeah, it's
if you're into fun fun mangas. That's actually one of those series too that every once in a while when I'm watching stuff on YouTube with friends or something, and you put in like top 10 anime fights or something like that. There's a couple like fights in the Gintama anime. I don't know if they did it like in the movies or something like that
no, they
that
were
have reached that. Like
yeah,
that.
they were actually in the show themselves, like not in
Oh, awesome.
the movie. Like it's, I will say, it's also one of the only series that I think it's better to watch the show. The show does such a good job, and I think it actually improves on the comedy of the manga in a lot of places.
Oh yeah,
Um,
once you're able to get like sounds and comedic timing and stuff that you wouldn't normally be able to deliver in a physical manga format. Yeah, that sounds great.
yeah.
So yeah, check that out as well. But yeah, I've seen a couple clips of some amazing animated fights in that series. I've also seen some freaking hilarious clips from that show too.
Yeah,
So
it's one of those shows where like it's like send this to your friend out of context, and it's just
yeah,
absurd clips, and then you watch it with context and you're like, this is still absurd, like
yeah.
this is still crazy. Uh,
Which
but
One Piece can dabble in, but as soon
oh
as One
yeah,
Piece does that, it ropes you right back in with intense world building story.
It really is sort of just like the two series to me are just they turned the dials on like comedy and actual like plot, and they're just slight adjustments between the two series. But this isn't a Gintama podcast, so we should probably get back to.
Well, yeah, I was going to
talking about-
segue into how One Piece is able to do comedy and then drop like huge drama. This chapter did that several times. Especially one thing that just shocked me and it kind of caused me to not turn the page for a couple minutes was Tengen. One of the first guys we met in Wano, the guy on the stilts and the big nose, his true identity was revealed in chapter 1053, and he was a character that we were told was dead, who died off screen when Odin came back. Odin's dad is still alive. He was sick, and Orochi seemingly killed him off screen to take over Wano, but it was revealed that Odin's dad was like locked away in some basement with the poneglyph. The poneglyph was under Tengen's house the whole time. and
that's one of the biggest like. This chapter just having that conversation in front of the poneglyph, not referencing what's actually on the poneglyph, is like one of the biggest like. I mean, the conversation was great and it had some big moments, but like, come on, Robin's there with the poneglyph, and they're talking about like Tengen's doll collection.
Well, again, we get another like show of how cold Robin can be. I mean, Robin's my One Piece waifu for sure, and I loved he was bringing up. It was like I barely escaped the room, and by the time that I did, Odin was already dead, and Wano was changed forever. And he was talking about how he was thinking about ending everything there, and then she's just like, "Okay, that's cool story, bro." Anyway, where the ancient weapon Pluton should be here, and that's just nuts to me because Kaido and his forces have been here for more than 20 freaking years, and they didn't find it. Or possibly did they? Because I remember when Big Mom and Kaido announced their alliance, they were bringing up that besides being super powerful, I can't remember the exact conversation, but it was something along the lines of they felt like they had the power to fight the world government. And I'm not sure if Kaido specifically brought up Pluton, but it almost felt like he was alluding to it, if I remember correctly. I could be totally wrong.
I actually I have a theory about Pluton, and it's been a while since I've read this sort of chapter where Big Mom and Kaido announced their alliance, but I sort of just read that when they announced that as like we're two of the strongest people in the world, and we've got two of the biggest crews in the world. Like, we can take on the world government, we can take on whoever we want. Because we're so powerful. That's how it's been a while since I've read the chapter specifically, but that was my impression. But
what do you think Pluton is?
So I have a theory. I don't know what exactly Pluton is, but I think that Pluton will only be revealed when the country is opened. And like my reasoning for that is that apparently opening up the country like does something important, because Momo was like, I'm not going to open up the country now, and Zoe was like, oh, okay, I'll just leave then. Let me know when you open it up. And that to me felt like, this elephant has to be here to do something when the country like opens up. So something physical must happen. It must not just be a political thing that happens. There must be something, like maybe the land lowers and like a weapon is revealed, or like maybe I don't even know, but like something has to happen, and I think that something is like Pluton gets unleashed in some capacity. It could also just be like, Princess Horikoshi the mermaid princess,
Hmm.
like it seems like she is an ancient weapon as well.
Well,
Um,
just her ability to communicate with the Sea Kings, I
yeah,
think was that because
yeah,
I mean the Sea Kings are like as big as islands. So,
yeah. So like Pluton could be like just the Kozuki bloodline, right? Like Momo could be Pluton.
ooh,
Um,
interesting.
yeah, which would explain why Momo can like talk to Zunisha, and also like why it's necessary for him to open the country in order for something to happen, right? Because he is Pluton.
Yeah, that would make sense. And yeah, a couple chapters ago, we didn't necessarily get to talk about it either. But
Yeah.
Momo decided not to open up Wano yet. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, at that point, they had just finished the fight. So I was, I was kind of thinking that possibly the reason that they didn't do that was so they could recover. Um, but
Mm.
I'm wondering if it's going to be a little bit longer. But I mean, Momo has the context of Odin's journal that we don't.
Yeah.
He's been able to talk to Yamato and figure out things that we don't know yet as an audience because apparently there's so much stuff in Odin's journal that is a big deal that we
Mm.
don't know about yet because he went and saw the One Piece. I think that his journal might be giving us the clue about the real existence of Laugh Tale and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I think that Momonosuke has a lot more information than we do, and probably good reason not to open up Wano yet.
Yeah, no, and I'm excited to see potentially that reason uh in the next chapter maybe. I mean, so here's the thing. Like I feel like next chapter like the Straw Hats are gonna just get run out of Wano by the Admiral.
You think so?
And we won't. Yeah, because I think what's going to happen is like, Momo knows a lot, Yamato knows a lot. If they talk to the Straw Hats about all that they know, like it could reveal too much just at this point in the story. And so I think like the Admiral could just show up, cause the Straw Hats to leave, not necessarily for their own safety, but to prevent like him from damaging like the capital and its people. Uh, and that would prevent Momo from being able to like talk to them about all that he knows. Uh, it could very well not happen as well. We might just get a big like info dump after the hiatus, which I would love
Yeah,
because
this is one series where I would be totally fine if Oda just pulled a Hunter x Hunter and we got pages of just dialogue and no
yeah,
pictures. Like I'd be okay with that with this
I mean the
series.
thing is like I would honestly like Oda's got me. Like
Yeah,
if Oda just like whatever he wants to do, I will
I'm in.
read it and I'll be like, that was the best chapter of manga ever. Like, uh, it's just I am hooked. Like, it's just incredible. There are very few authors that can get me this invested in a story and like this on board with wherever they go. And
Hmm.
Oda is definitely one of them.
Yeah, it's I don't want to put this bad juju out there, but I'm almost as invested and excited into this series, maybe even more than I was into like season 3 or 4 of Game of Thrones. It just felt like the best story that we could possibly be given, and and then at the end they just decided, you know what, let's do something else.
That
And
is that is much better juju than I thought you were gonna put out. I'm not gonna say what I thought you were gonna say, but
okay, good. We'll
I
save
don't
it.
because I don't want to put out that bad juju. Um,
Oh, I'm just.
but
I guess my point of that is just like that's the only way I could see One Piece fumbling near the
yeah,
end is if somehow Oda wasn't in charge of things
I mean, and
anymore.
and listen, even if that's the case, and like Oda just drops the ball at the finish line, he's produced like over 1,000 chapters
Of
of just
great
a
content.
great story. Like, I mean, obviously, I'm hoping they stick to the landing because I think it would make One Piece like one of the best stories of all time.
Hmm.
Um, But if
And
he doesn't, you know,
with a lot of the things he's said too, I think the difference between like a Game of Thrones situation and a possible One Piece situation is I feel like Oda has said that he knows what the ending is going to be already, and I would assume he's probably shared that with his staff too.
yeah.
I mean, there's been the unfortunate things with like the Berserk manga.
See, that's the bad juju I thought you were gonna put out there.
Oh,
Uh,
okay. Well, I mean, that is going to continue. We still have yet to. We don't have enough information if it's going to return, to the caliber that we have expected Berserk to be.
yeah,
But I feel like that's the difference between Berserk and One Piece. That's a series that has been through so many hiatuses and probably so many different staff members that I'm not sure if anybody really knew what Mira wanted to end that series like.
yeah,
I
and
don't feel like that's
also,
the same thing with One Piece. Like I think I feel like a lot of Oda's closest people probably know how the series is going to end. And right now they're taking a month-long break to restructure the entire final chunk of the story.
yeah, or at least plan it out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like Berserk though has something in common with One Piece that I'm not looking forward to the new chapters as much for is that like the art style is so distinctive,
With Berserk?
right? With both series,
Oh,
I
okay,
think.
yeah.
Like sure, Berserk is not necessarily like as stylistic as One Piece
Oh,
is,
of course. Like, yeah,
but
Berserk and One Piece are very established in their art styles.
yeah,
And that's kind of what I was mentioning earlier is like we have new chapters of Berserk coming, and we don't know, if they're going to look like Berserk, or if it's going to look a little bit different. I don't know. I'm
yeah.
excited.
I thought you were referring to like plot wise, which I'm also worried about. But
yes.
we'll have podcasts up when that
We'll
comes out.
we'll definitely be doing Berserk conversations.
Yeah,
Steven Blackburn, who is a normal guest on a lot of our different podcasts. We talk about all kinds of series, and he's in several of those conversations. He is one of the biggest Berserk fans I know, and we'll definitely be doing a big Berserk conversation before the new chapters start coming out and we start covering those. So look forward to that, Mega Manga Monday fans. But yeah, enough Game of Thrones and Berserk. We got
yeah.
through.
How did we get to talking about some of the most like gritty, like grimdark series?
Well, we seem to do that in a lot of the conversations about One Piece because One Piece does have that, but I guess we're just we bring in One Piece when it comes to giant epic storylines that that have been unfinished
Yeah,
as of yet, and One Piece is kind of one of those. So
yeah,
it
and
the comparisons happen several times.
yeah. I guess like those are like the sort of mega epics that loom largest in the public consciousness are like Game of Thrones and Berserk and just like these gritty masterpieces.
Well, at least
Um,
for us, for me specifically, really.
yeah, I think that like just in pop culture in general, like name one like super long series or like super long book or whatever that is as optimistic as One Piece is.
Marvel.
Oh, that's fair. Yeah, the MCU. Yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah, yeah. No, the MCU.
The Simpsons.
That is. Oh, I wouldn't call The Simpsons like a mega epic. I mean, it's long, but there's not much continuity in it, or like
Right.
overarching plot.
Very true.
Uh,
Oh
uh,
boy, wait until they do a season like that.
yeah, like they pull a South Park and they turn it into a serialized comedy. But
We're branching all over the place right
yeah,
now. Let's go back to One Piece. Another thing about this new chapter I loved was we got a couple panels of one of Wano's most prominent chefs, we can assume, taking 2 hours to establish the most delicate banquet he could possibly create for the Straw Hats, and the most polite. I was going to say newest member of the Straw Hat crew, but that is no longer true. But
Potentially.
Jimbei hanging out. And he's just, thank you so much for putting this meal together. But they got impatient and they're partying.
Which is like part of what I love about Jinbei.
Hmm.
Like Jinbei is just great. I love Jinbei.
It makes me even more excited for his place on the crew because um, our at the aforementioned Steven is reading through One Piece right now, and he has a lot more problems with the series than we do. And I feel like Jimbei is going to be possibly his favorite crew member because he just seems to be the no nonsense, the polite, the guy who's not freaking out over the top on every little thing. He seems to be the most level headed guy on the crew, and I feel like that position was a very heavy burden on Nami. Nami seemed to be that
I f-
character.
See. I feel like that was Robin. Who was that character?
Yeah, and maybe that's why I love Robin so much, but Robin always just felt like she was kind of going with the flow. Like whenever something silly was
Yeah.
going on, she was kind of just like smiling and like, "Oh, you guys." But Jinbei is straight up like, "Oh, we got to straighten up and be quiet, everybody." Like, "Oh, well,
Yeah.
I'll ask the captain first." Like, I just love how mature Jinbei is.
Yeah. He's great. Like, and him becoming a crew member was a long time coming.
Yeah.
And it's wild because like he joined the crew in the middle of the raid, but I feel like we haven't had a chance to really absorb that until now, where it's like the crew is off. They're not in mortal danger.
Hmm.
Uh, so can actually be a crew and just be a group of friends and stuff.
Well, yeah, that's actually like a lot of people's favorite bits about One Piece. And one complaint about the series that I can actually agree with is it's something that we got a lot before time skip was the times where the crew's just kind of hanging out and shooting the shit. Like they're just
I
kind
don't
of.
think that's. I think that's an invalid complaint. I am one of those people who love those moments.
Oh no, that's what I'm saying
Because
is that's a lot of people's favorite moments
oh yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
after time skip we don't. I feel like we haven't gotten as much and enough
Okay, yeah.
of that.
Yeah, no, I thought you were saying like people were complaining about those moments and being like, "Oh man, Oda should get to the action and not have these character interactions."
I don't know. In my
And
circles of Twitter and internet, it's yeah the opposite. People
yeah,
love those fun kind of relationship building, just slice of life conversations that the crew get to have, and yeah, you make a great point. Every time that we've had Jinbei play a major part in the story, which I would say this is the third time that that's really happened. Um, in the context of the whole crew being involved with Jinbei, not including Impel Down, that Jinbei has essentially been a Straw Hat, but had other things to do since we
Mhm.
left Fishman Island. I felt like that's kind of when he really became a member of the Straw Hat crew, just with his collaboration and working together with the crew. And then we have Whole Cake, and then we have here. But each one of those moments we had a lot going on. They were
Yeah.
fighting for their lives. They're running away. They're having to deal with it. And this is one of the first times that we've gotten to see Jinbei relax and hang out. And it's really refreshing because Jinbei's had a pretty rough life, and it's that moment to breathe that so many people like about One Piece because the cast is just so fun. And when they're not running for their lives and shocking each other, they're they're having great moments, and
Yeah.
this chapter somehow delivered all of that. Like this chapter had the Odin's dad reveal, we got the Emperor's reveal, and then we also like in the middle of it got the party. We've gotten the big party that we've been waiting for. Yamato's drunk, Luffy's drunk, like everyone's having a great time. And that actually brings up another note that I brought up. Luffy is toasting and like actually has words to say. He's usually
Yeah.
just the guy like, no, let's eat and party, yay! And this is kind of, I feel like it's really showing how Luffy is kind of developed as a character. Like he feels more mature now, especially I mean, he's officially an emperor. He just beat Kaido, and he's cheersing to all of the people who helped them fight. And we even got a
Yeah.
panel of Yamato holding Luffy like a baby, and Luffy's like pointing at Dragonform Momo, saying, "Don't tell anybody about me. I don't want to be a hero."
Yeah.
And
And I mean that's sort of been in line with Luffy's philosophy for the whole series, but
mhm,
uh it's sort of like one of those things where like a lot of people complain about One Piece because the characters don't grow. And it's not that the characters don't grow, but it's just like you said, like they mature, and maturation doesn't necessarily happen in dramatic bursts, right? It's just the characters go through what they go through, and they just naturally grow into their roles. And I actually think that's one of the big pluses of One Piece is that it doesn't sort of force their characters to grow only in these super like obvious dramatic moments where
mhm.
it's like, oh, this character grew in this way because they had this big moment that taught them to grow in that way, right? It, Here it's like One Piece and Co. fought a or not one Luffy and Co. fought a giant raid, and like they almost died multiple times. And so Luffy naturally, of course, is like really thankful for everyone who joined in the raid. And so he's expressing that gratitude in a way that he hasn't really had to, reckon with beforehand. Um,
Well, yeah, I just keep
and
my brain keeps going back to the end of Dressrosa because that was almost before this. That was the biggest conflict that the series had seen,
mm,
and after that, Luffy still was just like, "Oh no, I don't want any of this responsibility. Let's just party." And
yeah,
that's kind of why this like rings or popped out to me so much more was like Luffy going out of his way to congratulate everybody because unlike other fights where he was just focused like on the one goal, which he was with this too. He trusted everybody else to take care of things while Kaido was going on. But this is just showing that Luffy wasn't ignorant to everything that was going on below him while he was fighting Kaido. Like
yeah,
he knows how hard everybody fought, especially with people dying in this arc. And kind of going back to what you're saying, people complaining that One Piece characters don't develop. I think they develop a lot. It's just Oda
yeah.
does it in such a subtle way that a lot of people don't pick up on it. And I feel like this is one of those instances. Like this is just a very subtle evolution of Luffy thanking other people.
Yeah, and I think it's part of what like makes the characters, and this is maybe a controversial statement, but it's part of what makes the characters feel so real. Because the characters are so absurd, and of course they're like they have these quirks and like gimmicks and stuff that make them feel like, oh well, that's kind of like one note in that respect. But like you throw the characters into any situation, and I could tell you like, oh, Luffy will react to it in this way. If like Zoro's with him, then this is gonna happen. Like this combination of crew members interact in this way, like things like that. Like I feel like you know these characters so well that they feel like real people, even though they're a bit quirky and like absurd and just off the wall. Like they feel a lot realer than a lot of other characters in other series who like are just sort of tied to the plot that they're in. And it's like, well, what if they weren't in that plot? And it's like, well, I don't know. I've only seen them in this context, and I don't know enough about them to predict how they'd react to other things.
Yeah, I almost wonder
Um,
if that is just a result of when you tell a story that has world building so what's the word I'm looking for,
Intricate?
intricate, so well done. I think it's just I think it's the result of good character writing with a world class world building. Whenever you
Mm.
put those two together, then you're able to imagine what these characters are doing and can do, even when they're not on the page. It's just a testament to Oda's ability, I think, and kind of what we were saying earlier. Like, I can't imagine us getting another story like One Piece in our lifetimes.
Yeah.
We were lucky enough to be born in a time to be reading One Piece, and
Yeah, no.
I hope it's a series that 100 years into the future, when it's said and done, that people still look back at and be like, "Wow, that was a triumph."
Yeah, I agree 100%. And only time will tell whether it reaches that status, but I think no matter what happens, like One Piece has made its mark on both like the manga industry itself
Mm-hmm.
and just the world as a whole. Like and everyone who's read it, it, it's just it's so good. And that's why it's my favorite series of
Yeah.
my favorite manga series
Well,
of all
yeah,
time.
it was announced like maybe a week or two ago now that we are getting to the final saga of One Piece. And Shiro Oda and his team are taking a month-long break. From what I understand, Francesco tried to correct me on this, and I don't know if it's still happening or not, but some of the things that Oda and his team wanted to do during their month-long break, which is this is only the second time that they've taken such a long break, and when that previously happened, we got a 2-year skip. So quite a dramatic moment in the series. I don't think we're going to be getting a big time skip like that again.
Yeah.
But that'd be pretty wild if we did. But I believe he was going to check out, or they're going to work on the ending of the series. They're going to restructure it to figure out the best way to tell the story, so they can actually end the story and not just tell the story for another 20 years, which part of me would love, but another part of me is just like, you guys have put in the work.
Yeah.
You guys are absolutely deserve to finish this thing and then hopefully enjoy the rest of your lives.
Yeah, it won't be 20 years. It'll just be like 10 years.
Yeah. Well, that's not too long.
And I say that like half joking but half not, because think back to when the last I mean, you mentioned it, like that's when the time skip happened, last break of this long. And that was like 10 years ago, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I'd have to look back at it, but it was in our past podcast discussion with me and Francesco. We were kind of arguing on how long a One Piece saga is. I feel like this saga that is ending right now, the Emperor saga, started. I mean, you could argue it started with chapter 1, but I would say that it started with Punk Hazard, because that's when we got introduced to Kimimon and Momonosuke and the Smile Fruits and everything that's been leading up to this moment.
See, I'd actually argue that it started just right post time skip. And the reason
even
for that,
further back.
the reason for that, like, is partially just because like that's the easiest like sort of cutoff point where it's like, well, this is a clear break from the previous saga. But it's also because in Fishman Island, a big sort of thing in the background was that Big Mom had Fishman Island under her control.
That was her territory. Right? Yeah.
Yeah, and like Luffy and Co. going in there and doing what they did in Fishman Island was directly in opposition to Big Mom, which was sort of like a big thing. And it's sort of like how in pre-time skip, like Alabasta was of course immediately against Crocodile, right? That's in the forefront. We're going up against Crocodile, but like long term, that's like the first big opposition that Luffy had against like the world government.
True.
Disregarding like stuff that happened in the first 100 chapters, because that was more just East Blue stuff. But like, I sort of view Fishman Island like Alabasta in that regard, where like it wasn't explicitly against this like big power, but it was setting up the sort of direct clashes that happened later on in the saga.
Great insight. I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, that's another way to put it. Francesco, I believe, felt it started at Whole Cake, with the Emperor's Saga, and I was like, I don't know about
Oh
that.
no, I 100% disagree.
Yeah.
Like,
Uh,
uh,
but I guess the point of bringing this all up is to try to get an idea of how much One Piece we have in front of us still. I
yeah,
would like to think that if we go with my feelings on how long this Emperor's Saga has been going, I'm hoping that we have the amount. I'd have to go back and see what chapters it started on, but I'm hoping that we have enough One Piece where if we go back to Punk Hazard to now, I'm hoping we have that much One Piece ahead of us. Is I
yeah.
guess my point.
So I'll say this. It looks like sort of the last time skip because I looked back into like the manga chapters and volumes and things like that. And the sort of uh the point at which it happened just like in terms of years was like like 11 years ago. Like just in 2011, I'm
that
pretty sure is
that's how
when the
long
time
we've
skip.
been in post time skip.
Yeah. And
Oh,
I could see a similar length uh which is crazy to say, but like I mean, it's also you
oh
gotta keep in
man,
mind like it's
that's a
the
lot.
ending. It's the big ending. So a
Yeah.
lot of stuff is gonna be going on. So
Oh
like
boy.
it could honestly be longer. It could also be shorter for the same reason that it's the ending. And so like there aren't gonna be any new things really introduced probably.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. Well, so I mean,
but
you're almost suggesting that we're only 2/3 of the way through the story.
I could see that. I could see us being only 2/3 of the way through the story, or like being like I don't know maybe not like getting too like pedantic, but maybe like 3/5 of the way through the story,
Okay.
or I don't know something like or maybe 4/5 through the story. Like we still got a lot left, but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
tough to know how much.
I don't know, that's a pretty generous amount, I think. I almost I would not we're not going to get too in the weeds here, but
Uh,
yeah, I almost feel like we're maybe 3/4 of the way through the story.
yeah, I could see that too.
Yeah.
Like um, it either way, I think we have minimum 5 years. Uh, at a
Still.
minimum.
Yeah, which is something that I think they said that they had 5 years left of story left, maybe 3 years ago. So yeah, I think we definitely have more than a Dressrosa amount in front of us. Um,
Yeah.
at least I hope so, because
Yeah, I mean, we've got at least two big arcs, I think, that we have to do. Unless Oda condenses it all into one mega arc. But, like, I mean, look at what we've got ahead of us, right? We've got to have a confrontation with Blackbeard's crew. We've got to have a confrontation with the world government. We've got to have going to Raftel and seeing the One Piece. We may have going to Elbaf
mhm.
or Usopp. We may have like an arc devoted to like Luffy reuniting with Shanks. We may have like there's a lot of things we may have, but like the things that we must have on their own, I think comes to like a minimum of 5 years. Because I think those will be bigger than Wano.
Yeah, I don't know, because I mean those that is a big list of things, but I definitely trust Oda to tell the story. I feel like we've gotten, especially in this last arc, things are moving so fast. Um, but at the same time, this was the largest arc that One Piece has had so far. So, I mean, we're still getting a condensed version of One Piece through Oda, so he can tell the story fast enough. Excuse me. And that's another thing that kind of had me worried was in the translation I read when they were talking about their break was they were saying they want to restructure the ending of One Piece so then they can tell it quickly. Um, and I'm really hoping that it doesn't
I
get quicker than it
what
already is because it
I mean,
feels like it's really
what
fast.
I sort of interpret that as is like if a writer writes an outline that's like pretty detailed, then they can just easily like crank out those chapters based on the outline, right?
Hmm.
If they're like this happens in this chapter, this happens in this chapter, this happens in this chapter, then they can more easily get work out faster in the future because they're not like, oh, what exactly happens this chapter? I need to spend a lot of time thinking about it and like planning how it interacts with the next chapter and things. But here it's like Oda can just get going, like, and hit the ground running if he has a detailed enough outline.
Yeah,
So
yeah, and I hope that's what they're doing too. Because I mean, it's one of those things where if you have the outline, you've already had the conversation of, okay, well, we need this to happen so that we can get here, rather than them doing it every week of like, okay, well, let's do this because this will be cool. And then like, okay, well, then we have to do this eventually, and then that changes this, and it'd just be a much slower process. So yeah, I think that's the whole purpose of this outlining. That they're doing, and I have all the faith in them because they've gotten us to this point. So
yeah, and keep in mind, like, I don't think Oda's growing tired of One Piece. Like,
I'm not getting
Oda
that either,
loves Oda is the biggest fan of the series that exists. Like, he is so devoted to this series that he gets 3 hours of sleep each night, according to some sources.
Yeah,
Uh,
that was
but
actually
like,
something we talked about in the last discussion. I think documentary on like just getting a visit in the day of the One Piece studio would be fascinating.
oh yeah,
I would love to see a day in the office of how they are able to. Yeah, I'm just really curious because we know it's not just Oda sitting in a room drawing this and then pumping it out. Like, it's the biggest, one of the biggest stories in the world right now. So it's a whole studio of people working to put out these chapters.
well, part of the interesting thing is like Oda does have assistants, but he always draws all the characters himself. He's like, you guys can draw some of the backgrounds, but I'm drawing all the characters.
Really?
And also Oda draws a lot of the memorable backgrounds too. So like,
yeah.
So even though he's not alone, he's still he's majorly like the driving force behind this. Like, which is just insane. Like, it's a testament to the man's devotion and just he's one of the hardest working authors like in the world nowadays, not just in manga but in any medium.
Well, there's a reason the internet calls him Goda or Goda.
Yeah, Goda. Yeah.
Well, man, so far this is probably the longest podcast we've recorded. Any other thoughts on One Piece chapter 1053 before we jump into recommendations and plugs?
Listen, if I got into more, we'd be here for like another hour. So
Yeah.
let's get into the recommendations and plugs. We can save this for some other One Piece podcasts, maybe in the hiatus period.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll go ahead and use that to jump into my first plug for this podcast. If you enjoyed our conversation, this is Mega Manga Monday. We talk about all kinds of different podcasts that we are really into with different guests. Today you've listened to One Piece. We've discussed previous chapters, so if you're curious to hear those discussions, go back and give those a listen. We also talk about series like Dragon Ball Super, Jujutsu Kaisen, My Hero Academia, Boruto, and others. So please check that out if you're into those types of mangas and caught up on them, because we've been talking about new chapters whenever they come out. So look forward to more One Piece discussions. We might even try to have a One Piece discussion during the break while we're getting ready for the next new chapters a month from now, because we still have so much to talk about. Check out Mega Manga Mondays. Follow us on Twitter at @mmanga_mondays. I am Jason Hahn, and I'm also a writer for ScreenRant.com. Check out Screen Rant for lots of interesting articles on video game news, movie news, and comic news. A lot of the other guys we talk to on the podcast write very, very interesting, insightful articles about different mangas and comics through Marvel, DC, and, as we said, manga. So check that out as well. Final plug from me too. I do a YouTube channel called Honzy and Friends. I do some Let's Plays and streaming. My Let's Play videos have been kind of haven't been coming out as normal because I've been focusing on this and Screen Rant stuff. But yeah, go ahead and subscribe. Let me know in the comments what kind of stuff you guys would like to see me do. But it's a comedy and video games. If you like that kind of thing, check that out. How about you, Ben?
Yeah, so before getting to the plugs, I'll give some recommendations. We talked about Gintama for a decent portion of the podcast,
Yeah.
and I'll just throw my recommendation behind that. Just know if you watch the show, the first like 20 or so episodes are a bit rough because they're introducing the world and things. Just think of it like the sort of beginning arcs of One Piece, where you had to get through Syrup Village to get to the good stuff that came later on.
Oh man, I did not like
It's a,
Syrup Village.
yeah, it's a similar sort of thing, where like the beginning episodes of Gintama are fun, but they're mainly setting up the characters and things, and then it gets a lot better later on. But Gintama is such a good show. It'll make you laugh, make you cry sometimes in the same episode, and it's just great. And I think that a lot of fans of One Piece will enjoy the length and storytelling style of Gintama. But moving on to the plugs, I also write for Screen Rant for the comics section, so be sure to check that out. But I also have a YouTube channel of my own called YGO from Zero, which is basically focusing on diving into old historical formats of the Yu-Gi-Oh card game and just making guides for them and showing examples of gameplay and things like that. So it's very fun if you're into that sort of thing. I'm currently in the process of learning the next format that I'll be covering, so won't be releasing too many videos like much this week, but I should be back releasing videos next week. So if you're interested, look forward to those.
Oh, very cool, man. I'm glad to hear you're still having a lot of fun with that. That sounds really
Oh yeah,
fascinating.
no, it's a blast. I'm mainly doing the channel because I want to play these games myself. So uh, so it's giving me an excuse to do that.
Oh, very cool, man. And are there any particular Screen Rant articles that you've written recently that you feel really proud of that you'd like people to check out?
Ooh, that's a good question. There's one that I'm writing for this weekend. Well, actually, so it might be out by the time this podcast comes out.
Yeah, this podcast
That
will be coming out on Monday, so.
Yeah, so this article might be out by then, but it's actually a One Punch Man theory that I'm really proud of. And it's I really enjoyed sort of coming up with the theory, and I'm gonna really enjoy writing the article. So I'm excited for people to read it. But it concerns the actual reasons behind the retcon that happened recently.
Yeah, I didn't realize. We're a lot of us are One Punch Man fans also, and I'm hoping we can have some One Punch Man discussions soon because
Yeah.
the current version on Shonen Jump has a lot of really exciting stuff going on. But yeah,
Yeah.
they had one chapter end like a fight that we've been waiting for a long time. And then, like 2 weeks later, they're like, "Yeah, never mind." And they went back and just completely like deleted some pages, and then redid the rest of the fight to have it go on even longer and even crazier than it already was. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I have a theory as to why that is, which I won't reveal now. I'll reveal in our discussion. If you read my article, you'll see it there. So,
Well, hell yeah. Well, if you guys would like to listen to us talk about some more One Punch Man, let us know in the comments. Reach out to us
yeah.
on Twitter, and I think we're on YouTube also, so go ahead and check that all out. But I think that'll wrap up this episode of Mega Manga Monday before we go too long. But definitely look forward to more discussions. Had a blast talking about One Piece with you today, and I hope you guys have a good one.
Yeah, see y'all next time.